All right, let's jump right in. India's 2026 budget has just dropped, and trust me, it's way more than just a bunch of numbers on a spreadsheet. You really got to think of it as the government's game plan for the whole year, and it's teeing up some pretty big changes.
And that's really the heart of it. This isn't just about tweaking things here and there. Nope. This is about a massive long-term vision, a full-on strategy to reshape India's economy. They're making some huge bets, and of course, that's fired up some really passionate debates.
Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's zoom out. What's the big idea here? What's the philosophy driving all of these decisions?
So the big catchphrase you're going to hear a lot is Viksit Bharat, which basically means developed India. The mission? To get India to developed nation status by the year 2047. And the way they're selling it is this idea of balancing, huge ambitions with making sure nobody gets left behind. The finance minister laid out 3 guiding principles, or kartavyas, duties. First up, floor it. Accelerate economic growth and make sure it lasts. Second, actually listen to what people want and need. And third, make sure everyone, and I mean everyone, has a fair shot at getting the resources and opportunities to succeed. And yeah, the Prime Minister's quote really sums up the super optimistic vibe they're going for. They want you to see this not just as a boring policy document, but as the actual highway to a brighter future for the whole country. Okay, so that's the grand vision. But how do they actually plan on getting there? What's the strategy? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Build. And build a lot. This is their #1 answer for making that Viksit Bharat dream a reality. Now, to get this next part, you need to know one key term, capital expenditure, or CAPEX for short. It's actually really simple. It's just the money the government spends on building big, long-lasting stuff. We're talking roads, ports, railways, you get the idea. It's not about paying salaries. It's about investing in the physical backbone of the economy for years to come.
And get ready for this number because it's a big one. The government is planning to pour a record-breaking 12.2 lakh crore rupees into this capex. I mean, wow, that's a huge, huge bet on infrastructure being the main engine that's going to drive the economy forward.
So where's all that cash going? Well, think bigger and faster freight corridors, opening up 20 new waterways for transport and building out 7 new high-speed rail corridors. Plus, they're also putting in these guarantees to kind of nudge private companies to get in on the action and invest alongside them.
All right, let's shift gears. We're about to get into what might be the single biggest and definitely the most controversial change in the entire budget. And it all has to do with rural India and its main employment program.
So for a long time, there was this program called MGNREGA. It was a huge deal, a safety net that guaranteed 100 days of work, and the central government paid for all of the unskilled labor. Well, that's being swapped out for a new scheme, VBG-RAMG. Now, on the surface, it looks like an upgrade, 125 days of work instead of 100. But, and this is the really big but, the funding has totally changed. Now it's a 60-40 split between the central government and the states. And this slide just lays it all out in black and white. Just look at these numbers. The funding for the old scheme, MGRAGA, it's been absolutely slashed, down from 86,000 crore to just 30,000. And where did that money go? Well, the new scheme gets a whopping 96,000 crore. It's not a tweak, it's a total replacement.
Now, as you can imagine, the opposition is not happy about this. Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge is saying, look, this is a calculated move to kill off MGNREGA, a program that's been a critical lifeline for people in rural areas for years.
But the government sees it completely differently. The Rural Development Minister's argument is, hold on a second. If you add our 60% to the state's new 40%, the total pot of money for rural employment is going to be over 1.5 lakh crore. He's calling it a historic and totally unprecedented amount of investment.
Okay, so with all that going on, let's pull back again and look at the country's checkbook. For every single rupee that comes in, where does it actually come from? And then, where does it all go?
First up, where does the money come from? So think of a rupee broken into 100 paise. The biggest piece of that pie, 24 paise, actually comes from borrowing. Right behind that is personal income tax. That's 21 paise. Then you've got taxes on company profits at 18 paise, and GST brings in another 15. The rest is from a mix of other sources.
Okay, so that's what's coming in. Now, where's it all going?
Well, the largest single expense, 22 paise of every rupee, goes straight to the states. That's their share. The next biggest chunk, 20 paise, is just paying the interest on all that money the government has borrowed over the years. Then you have 17 paisa going to central government programs, and defense spending takes up about 11 paisa.
So, no surprise here, a budget with this many big moves has got everyone talking. Let's get into the great debate and hear what both sides are saying.
On one side, you have folks in the industry, like Santosh Agarwal from Paisa Bazaar, who are pretty upbeat. They see this as a bold, positive budget that keeps reforms moving forward. They especially love that huge focus on building infrastructure, that CAPEX we talked about.
But on the other side, the opposition is raising some serious red flags. They're pointing out that even though the raw number for defense spending is up, as a slice of the whole economy, it's actually shrunk. They're also worried about a growing trade deficit, sluggish private investment, and the fact that the outlook for foreign investment is pretty shaky.
And that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? This budget is one massive bet, a bet that building big things will lead to big growth. So, is this the solid foundation that will launch a developed India? Or are the risks, that huge shift in rural policy, the worries about trade, the lack of private investment, are those blind spots just too big to ignore? That's the question that's going to be debated all year long.